All right, everyone. So we were talking about navigation bars. The second half of today's module is going to be about typography. Okay. So typography has to do with the study of type. Now we've talked a lot about different typographical things you can do. So you can use, for instance, font family to set a font, or color to set the color. You can set it to be italic with font style, or set the weight using font weight. What we're going to deal with here is the ability to work with typefaces, or just to kind of quickly define this in case you haven't really taken a graphic design class. A typeface is the stylization of a group of characters, okay? So in English, those group of characters would be like A through Z, 0 through 9, okay? And so a typeface would be something like, Helvetica. So if I go to by the way, if you're wondering, this is a font book on my Mac here, but it's showing me all the characters A through Z that's in Helvetica. Okay, the certain stylization. Or if I was to look at, say, a typeface like Courier. Okay, Courier New. This is A through Z lowercase. This is A through Z uppercase. Italic. This is a set of numbers. There's going to be probably also things like special characters, not special characters, but things like punctuation, commas, periods, exclamation points, things like that. Okay. Let's look at Times New Roman real quick. Okay, so you can see there's a visual difference between the different typefaces. So one thing about setting a typeface, normally we do this with the font family CSS property. The one thing about a typeface is, in order for the user to view the typeface, they need to have the font file for that typeface installed on their device. Okay, now what do I mean by that? So without getting too deep into typography, in order to create Times New Roman, the typeface, you need to have Times New Roman, the font, installed on your machine. Okay, that means whether it's a desktop, a laptop, your smartphone, your tablet, you have to have that font file installed on your computer. So if I was to actually go into my computer, I can find the font file that stores all of the information for Times New Roman. I can go and find the file that stores all of the information for Courier New. And the same with Helvetica. I can go find the file that stores all the information that has A through Z, 0 through 9, that sort of thing. Now here's the problem. Okay, now we've talked about, when we set up our websites, we have a server, right? And we store the HTML, and we store the CSS file, right? And if someone tries to connect to our server, like here, they will download all of the web files. They'll download all of the HTML files, all the CSS files, all the images related to that website. What they don't download in this set of files is they don't download the font file. Okay. So in other words, when you say, in your CSS, if you say something like font family, let's just say, Courier, okay? The server, the website you get it from, this is more of a suggestion. It doesn't actually give the users a copy of Courier to install on their machine. And there's actually a lot of licensing issues that go along with this too. So the font family is really sort of a suggestion, but it involves the user actually having the typeface installed on their machine. Now the problem is most people don't really have a lot of fonts installed on their computer or their smartphone. Either they don't care or they don't know how to install fonts. There's many reasons, or they can't because there's an IT issue and they can't install anything. So for a long time, web developers basically had what was called a web-safe font. And this was just a list of fonts that most people had, okay, already on their device, okay. It was a pretty small list. This is pretty much it. Arial, Verdana, Tahoma, Times New Roman, Georgia, Courier New, Brush. These were basically fonts that were common both on Mac OS X, but also on Windows and also on Android and also on iOS. The problem with that is it's very limiting. You can't, there's only so many typefaces you can have, and if you wanted to have a more stylized typeface, the problem was you can define it, but then when someone else downloads your HTML and your CSS, they're not going to have that font on their machine, so it kind of, without it, it's going to be ignored, and that's a problem. What we're going to talk about right now, though, is how we can actually bring in additional typefaces or fonts that we can install for the user, and then that they can, utilize to create certain looks. So this is exercise 6 here. Okay, and before I do anything, I just want you to notice. So I have this H1, and what I'm going to do is actually, I'm going to turn something off real quick. All right, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to set my H1 and I'm going to say font family Cabin Sketch. Cabin Sketch is the name of the typeface that I like. I'm going to save it and I'm going to preview this. Okay. Now, when I preview this, you'll notice that even though I defined it as Cabin Sketch here, it ends up looking like Times New Roman because it is. Now, the problem in this case is I deliberately deleted the typeface from my computer. So even though it's on, even though it's defined in the CSS, without the actual font file installed, I can't do anything. You know what I mean? It's not going to look special. Now, how do you solve this, you might wonder? Well, one is you could just install the font. So I gave you a copy of that Cabin Sketch font. If you know how to install fonts, I can install it. And once it's installed, then, because at least in this case, my computer has it, if I go back and I refresh, you can see that it's now updated. Now, there's a problem with this method, okay? You're expecting the user to install a font for you. And that's not a good system because, one, people just are lazy and they don't want to do it. Two, they may not know how to install a font. Three, they may not have the ability to install a font if they're on a computer where they're not the admins and they don't have access to things. So this isn't, giving someone a font is not the best method. So let's just kind of, I'm going to turn this off or get rid of it. Okay, there's another way we can do this, okay? And what we're going to be doing is using what's called a web font. And what the web font does, and I believe I have a, maybe not. So what's going to happen here is you guys are going to, we're going to have an HTML file and a CSS file that people are going to download. This is the server. This is, someone downloading the files. inside of the HTML file, there's going to be a piece of code that makes the user's computer go off to another computer. This one's actually run by Google. So I'm going to call this Google server. It doesn't, in this case, we're using what's called Google Fonts. There's many different services, and each of them would have their own server. But we're going to go to something called Google Fonts, and it's actually going to, the code in the HTML file that they download is actually going to go tell them to temporarily install a font, okay? So they're actually going to get the font file. It's going to download to the person's computer. Once it's installed, then we can call it in the CSS because now it's been installed. Okay, now it doesn't permanently install the font. It really installs it into what's called the cache of the browser. The cache is like kind of the temporary storage of the browser. So as soon as someone, clears their cache, or if they don't, if they're in, what's the word I'm looking for? If they're in like, if they restart, not restart the computer, but if they use like in incognito mode or something like that, then it wouldn't do this. But essentially, this is going to cache or download the file, then we can call it. So there are many sort of, this is what's called a web font. Okay, now there's a lot of services that do this. We're going to use Google Font. There's also services like Typekit, which is part of the Adobe suite, if you're familiar with that. There's something called Squirrel Font. I'm sure there's other ones, but these are just a couple. We're going to use Google Font because it's literally free. So I'm going to go to Google Font. You can just literally go fonts.google.com or search in Google. There's a link in the module for you. And you're going to get something that looks like this. You can actually organize your typefaces. So you can organize them by category. So if you know what a serif or a sans serif is, or a display font, you can search by those. You can search by character sets. This would let you search by, whether you want to use Latin-based languages like A through Z, like English or Spanish or French, or whether you want to use other character systems like, Chinese would have its own character system, or, Hindi, or, other languages that use non-Latin-based character sets. You could search by that. You could search by the physical properties, which is like whether you want the fonts to be wider or thinner or slanted or not slanted. It's kind of up to you. You can also search by name. I'm actually going to search by name. I'm just going to type in Cabin Sketch. Okay. If you want, you can make the font bigger or smaller. You can also, if you want to type something specifically, you can too, right? This is kind of the default type, but if you wanted to type something specific, Mr. Hurwitch or whatever I want to put, I can type in there and see it at different sizes. I'm going to click on it, and once again, it kind of shows, this is the name of the name of the font. This is the name of the person who created it. This is kind of a, example of the text. These are the styles. So for instance, there's a regular and a bold of it. I'll take both. What I'm going to do is click on this little plus sign here. When you do that, it's going to open up this little side panel, which is usually up here in the upper right-hand corner. Okay, so you can see the name Cabin Sketch. This is a regular. This would be a bold. So like if you're using like a heading, like heading 1, heading 2, or something like that. All right, so this is, if you want to remove a typeface or one of its versions or styles, you can click on the little minus sign. You can see it removes it. I'm just going to go back and add them all. All right, so for now, we're just going to use Cabin Sketch, the one that I was just demoing from. And so now what we need to do is we need to get this font referenced in our HTML. So I'm actually going to go here where it says use on the web. And I'm going to go to where it says to embed a font, copy the code into the head section of your HTML. And I'm going to copy this whole thing. Make sure you're on link and not import. This would be for CSS. I would link systems a little bit better for reasons I don't really want to get into right now. You can write me separately if you really care that much. It's not particularly super interesting, but I'm just going to copy this and I'm going to go back to here, and I need to paste this into my head section, okay, the head part of your document. It's also a good idea to paste it before you call it in the CSS, because if you think about it, if they haven't downloaded the font yet, you can't call it in the CSS because it doesn't exist yet, if that makes sense, okay? So I want to paste this before the CSS. It doesn't matter where, as long as it's before it. I'm going to paste that in, and I'm just going to beautify this. All right, so basically what this is doing is it's connecting to Google Fonts, and then it's looking for this particular typeface, or this font typeface, Sketch. This is 400 and 700. All right, what this is doing is it's going to install the font for the user. They don't have to do anything. As soon as they load the HTML file, it'll automatically go get those fonts and bring them back. So I'm going to go back to my example. And if I refresh, there you go. It's working. I'm now getting that additional typeface. Now, I'm going to go back, and actually, I want to get a couple additional typefaces. One is called AudioWide, and one is called Nucha. So I'm going to go back, and I'm going to add a couple more fonts. So one is called AudioWide. Okay, here it is. Click on the plus sign. And the other one is called Nucha. Just a little more of a kind of, a little more of a kind of organic style typeface. I'm going to click on the plus sign there. So you can see I'm getting one for, it's listing all the different typefaces: Cap'n Sketch, AudioWide, Nucha. What I want to do is recopy this because I've changed the code a little bit. I'm actually going to go back and I'm going to delete this, make sure you get everything. And I'm just going to paste the new version of the code. All right, so now that I've done that, what I'm going to do is I can now call that AudioWide, and I can call the Nucha typeface. So I'm going to go here, H2, font family. By the way, if you're not sure how to call the typeface, like if you're just a little confused, at the very bottom here in Google Font, it'll tell you how to do it. So you can see where it says like font family AudioWide, font family Cap'n Sketch. It has a backup, in case for whatever reason this doesn't work. This is sort of the backup typeface category, which is cursive, which is like a little bit of a italic styled typeface. So I'm going to go back here. So AudioWide, and let's do H3, font family Nucha. Okay, let's save and go back. Okay, so there you go. You can see I'm getting all these new unique typefaces. And I'll just go back and look for a new typeface. I'm going to search by properties. Let's find a really thick one that's kind of slanted. I guess there's not too many that are slanted. I kind of like this one. It kind of looks like an old-fashioned typewriter. This one has kind of bubble letter kind of feeling. Let's do this one just for the fun of it. So I'm going to come in here, choose regular. I think that's the only one I can use. It's called Modak. Once again, I need to recopy this, and I'm going to go back, replace the old code with the new code, hit save, and I'm going to change this to that Modak. Once again, I can double check. It's just Modak. And let's hit save. And if I go back, it should now do that sort of bubble letters. This one is a little too thick. Maybe it would be better on like a non. Let's do, I'm going to fix this. Let's just do font weight normal. I don't really like this overly. That's a little better. All right, so there's my typeface there. All right, so why don't you try that out? Try getting those typefaces to install from Google Fonts, and there's a link in the module for you.